This is the story of a very smart and brave man named Willis Augustus Lee Jr. He became a great leader in the United States Navy. He was born on May 11, 1888, in a small place called Naphtali, Kentucky. His family had lived there for many years. When Willis was young, his family moved to a bigger town. Willis was a very intelligent child. He was good at school, but he also enjoyed playing jokes on people. From a young age, Willis found another strong interest: shooting guns. He loved to go into the woods and shoot his rifle, using a lot of ammunition. He was a very good shooter. Sometimes, he even worked to remove pests like sparrows and rats from public buildings using his shooting skills. However, something sad happened. Willis made a homemade bomb, and it exploded near his face. This accident hurt his eyes. Because of this, he needed to wear thick glasses for his whole life. After a war called the Spanish-American War, Willis wanted to join the Navy. He went to the Naval Academy in Annapolis in 1904. At the academy, he received a special nickname. People thought his face looked round, and his skin had a yellow color. They thought he looked a bit like Chinese people, so they started calling him Chink Lee. This name later changed to Ching Lee because it was easier to say. He also liked things from the Far East, which added to this nickname. At the Naval Academy, Willis did not like all his studies. He preferred to read books very quickly, remember everything, and then spend time on his two main interests, drawing or shooting. Because he loved shooting so much, he won a gold medal for excellent target practice. He also joined the Academy's rifle team. He won the National Rifle and Pistol Championships, beating many other shooters. He used special glasses for shooting, which had a half lens. Willis's eyesight was a big problem for his career, but his friends helped him. They would take the eye test at different times and tell Willis what letters were on the chart. This way, Willis could memorize the chart and pass the test. Because of his other strong skills, the Navy allowed him to graduate. He finished school in June 1908. After graduation, Willis spent the summer with the Navy rifle team. Then, he was assigned to a new battleship called the USS Idaho. He lived on this ship for 2 years. In 1909, he helped welcome the famous Great White Fleet back home. Later, Willis traveled to China on the small ship USS New Orleans. In 1910, he wrote a paper for a Navy journal about shooting revolvers. His best advice was to acquire accuracy before you try for speed. This means it's more important to be able to hit the target first, before trying to shoot quickly. He then moved to a small gunboat, the USS Helena, still in Asia. On this ship, he often challenged sailors from other countries' navies to shooting competitions he always won. In 1913, he was called back home and joined the battleship USS New Hampshire. In 1914, while on the USS New Hampshire, Willis was part of an important event in Mexico called the Veracruz Incident. He was part of a landing party sent into the city. Snipers were shooting from hidden places. Willis realized he needed to make the snipers show themselves. He borrowed a rifle and sat on the street. He waited for the sun to shine off a sniper's rifle. When he saw it, he quickly shot the hidden sniper. His shipmates were amazed. He also saved a wounded shipmate who was under heavy fire. He was promoted for his bravery. At the end of 1915, Willis started a job on land. He became an inspector of ordnance, watching over factories that made weapons for the Navy. His job grew to cover factories across 6 states. In 1916, his eyesight again caused problems for a promotion. But because the U.S. was preparing for World War I, his skills were needed more than strict medical rules. He was promoted to full lieutenant and then to temporary lieutenant commander. He also met his future wife during this time. Willis wanted to fight at sea during World War I. He asked to be assigned to a ship in Europe. However, he arrived on the USS O'Brien just 9 days after the war ended in November 1918. After various duties, he returned home in summer 1919. He married Maybelle Allen Elspeth on July 14, 1919. After coming home, Willis rejoined the U.S. Navy rifle team. He was chosen to go to the 1920 Olympic Games in Antwerp, Belgium. This was a great success for him. He won a total of 7 medals, 5 gold, 1 silver, and won bronze. He won gold in different rifle shooting events, such as the 50-meter small-bore rifle. He and his teammate Lloyd Spooner set a record for the most medals won by one person at a single Olympic Games, a record that stood for 60 years. By the end of his life, his wife had a large display with over 70 medals and awards from his shooting career. By late 1920, Willis's temporary rank of lieutenant commander became permanent. Soon after, he received his first command, the new destroyer, USS Fairfax. He was based in South Carolina. He also became the squadron gunnery officer. After 9 months, he commanded another destroyer, the USS William B. Preston, and sailed it to Asia. While in Asia, Willis continued to be inventive. He improved a way to get rid of rats on the ship using an electric guillotine. He also played a trick on British sailors in Hong Kong. He pretended to shoot badly, making them happy to invite him to a shooting competition against American sailors. But then, Willis surprised them and won easily. He also shared his love of shooting with his ship's gunners, helping them improve their skills. In 1928, he studied at the Naval War College. He wrote an important paper about how to correct for the Earth's turning when shooting battleship guns over long distances. An officer on the USS West Virginia used his ideas, and that battleship won shooting competitions for 3 years. In 1931, Willis was assigned to the USS Pennsylvania, a large battleship. He became the executive officer. He worked hard to improve the ship's gunnery. In 1933, he moved ashore to the Navy Department. His job was to completely improve the Navy's shooting and battle instructions. He even set up a BB gun shooting gallery in his office to practice. Willis was promoted to captain in 1936. He got his first major ship command, the light cruiser USS Concord. He focused on improving gunnery and training his officers. The Concord performed very well under him. In 1939, Willis returned to the Navy Department again. His job was to prepare the U.S. Navy for war. As Assistant Director of the Fleet Training Division, he focused on making gunnery better across the entire Navy. He wanted to give Navy men the best equipment and ships. He thought the Navy should build more aircraft carriers instead of more large battleships. Willis also helped solve problems with Navy intelligence. He helped create a training course that sent Navy officers to Hollywood to learn photography. He also secretly sent officers to the United Kingdom to learn about photo interpretation. This helped the U.S. Armed Services a lot later in the war. He sent an officer, Lieutenant Commander Wellings, to the British Home Fleet to gather information on tactics, gunnery, and radar. Wellings' reports helped Willis show the Navy that the U.S. was behind the British in many areas. This led to more American officers being sent to Britain to learn. In 1941, Willis became the director of fleet training. He pushed for better anti-aircraft weapons. He helped bring in powerful new guns like the 20mm Oerlikon and 40mm Bofors into the U.S. Navy. He also pushed for more anti-aircraft training. He was very interested in radar and suggested a new school to train radar operators. In September 1941, he was promoted to Rear Admiral. Soon after, the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. Willis focused on sending as much ammunition as possible to the front lines. Admiral King, the head of the Navy, put Willis in charge of fleet readiness. Willis found that the Navy's security was not good enough. To prove this, he made an ID card with Adolf Hitler's photo on it. He walked around a very guarded Navy base, and no one stopped him. It took an ID with an actress's photo to finally get him stopped. Willis then worked to fix other problems. When new water purifiers were held up by paperwork, he simply ordered them to be sent to the fleet immediately. When a supplier gave poor quality parts for guns, Willis told his subordinate to tell the department to switch suppliers. He also found a way to get many new anti-aircraft guns installed on ships. He told the Bureau of Ships to approve buying the guns. After they signed, his subordinate added an installation to the document. So, new guns were ready to be put on ships as soon as they arrived in port. Willis also pushed for a new, important weapon called the VT fuse. This fuse made shells explode near their target using radar. Some people wanted it to be perfect, but Willis said no and sent it quickly to production. He also told the Navy that if they could not make enough radar units in the U.S., they should buy them from the British. More radars suddenly appeared. On August 10, 1942, Willis received a very important new job. He became the commander of the 1st U.S. Navy Fast Battleship Division. His main ship was the new USS South Dakota. But the South Dakota soon hit an uncharted reef and needed repairs. So, Willis moved his flag to the USS Washington. His division, meant to have 3 battleships, became just the USS Washington when another ship was damaged. Willis used this time to gather his staff. He talked to the Washington's electronic maintenance officer and fire control officer. He learned everything about the radar on his ship. He also believed that the Navy's charts for gunpowder strength were wrong. He proved this with a test and then told the officers to correct their charts. For fun, he would shoot at glass balls floating in the ocean with his pistol. The Washington's radar room was close to his cabin, allowing him to spend a lot of time there. This helped him understand radar well. He even used his radar knowledge to guide his ships to avoid Japanese scout planes. As the fighting around Guadalcanal became more intense, Willis and the Washington moved closer to the battle area. He had the cruiser USS Atlanta practice shooting with his battleships at a very long distance. He would make adjustments, and the shots would land precisely. His radar operators also learned to distinguish ships from islands on their radar screens. The USS South Dakota returned from repairs and joined Willis's group. Then came a very important battle, the Naval Battle of Guadalcanal. After a difficult first night for the U.S. Navy, Willis and his 2 battleships, the USS Washington and USS South Dakota, were called into action on the second night. They also had 4 destroyers with them. Willis had not worked with these destroyers before, and they had not worked together. He quickly sent a plan using signal lights. The Washington's radar had a blind spot behind the ship. But even with this problem, Willis led his ships into battle. His many hours of gunnery training were very helpful. The first shots from his ship were so powerful they knocked his glasses off his face. After fighting some Japanese escort ships, the Washington destroyed the Japanese destroyer Ayanami. The USS South Dakota faced electrical and gun problems, but Willis on the Washington had been tracking the Japanese battleship Kirishima with his radar. When the Japanese ships started firing, the Washington was ready. Within 7 minutes, more than 20 large 16-inch shells hit the Kirishima. The Kirishima was destroyed and sunk. Willis, being humble, reported fewer hits than he actually made. This allowed the South Dakota to safely leave. The Washington was the only U.S. Navy ship still fighting in the close battle. Japanese ships were firing shells and torpedoes. But Willis's training helped again. His gun crews used the smaller 5-inch guns to target Japanese searchlights and fire bright star shells. These flares made it hard for the Japanese to use their own optical sights. The Washington moved skillfully through the night, avoiding all torpedoes and almost every shell. For his brave actions, Willis Augustus Lee was awarded the Navy Cross. His victory was a turning point in the Battle of Guadalcanal and the Pacific War. In April 1943, Willis received a new title, Commander, Battleships, Pacific Fleet. This meant he was in charge of all battleships in the Pacific. The Washington got repairs and improvements, including better radar and many more 40mm Bofors guns. Willis continued to lead battleships. In November 1943, he commanded a group that attacked the island of Nauru. In February 1944, he was part of battleships that worked with aircraft carriers in attacks on Truk and the Marshall Islands. He also directed the bombing of Ponape, causing much damage. In February 1944, the USS Washington collided with the USS Indiana. Both ships needed repairs. Willis moved his flag to the USS North Carolina. At the end of March 1944, Willis was promoted to Vice Admiral. This was his first promotion that was not backdated. The next month, he commanded a very large group of ships, Task Group 58,1, with 6 fast battleships, 13 cruisers, and 22 destroyers. He used this force to bombard the Caroline Islands. He also collected seashells for his wife. Later that year, during the Battle of the Philippine Sea, Willis declined a night attack on the Japanese fleet. He felt his ships were not trained enough for night fighting, and he did not want to risk lives. His decision was good, as the battle became mostly an air fight. During the Battle of Leyte Gulf in October 1944, Willis strongly believed the Japanese forces would come through the San Bernardino Strait. He sent many warnings, but Admiral Halsey's staff did not give him all the messages, and Halsey ignored the ones he got. So, Willis had to follow Halsey north, away from the strait. He heard desperate messages from other American forces being attacked. The famous message, "Where is Lee? Send Lee," was sent. Admiral Nimitz then sent a message asking where is Task Force 34, the world wonders. This finally made Halsey send Willis south. But it was too late. Willis was disappointed he missed another chance to fight Japanese ships. In late November, Willis moved his flag to the USS South Dakota. Admiral Halsey then sailed the fleet into a typhoon, which Willis had warned him about. For the rest of the war, Willis's battleships mostly protected aircraft carriers from Japanese planes, especially kamikazes. Willis was very concerned about the new VT fuses. They were great, but they did not have a self-destruct mechanism. This meant if a shell missed its target, it could fall and explode near a friendly American ship. He asked the Bureau of Ordnance to add a self-destruct feature. When they refused, Willis wrote back that their answer was not acceptable, and even provided his own solution. In May 1945, Willis learned that his time commanding ships at sea was ending. There were almost no more Japanese battleships left to fight. Because of the many American deaths from kamikaze attacks, Willis was needed back home to find ways to fight them. In late June, he sailed back to the United States. Back home, Willis began working on many new anti-aircraft measures. On August 25, 1945, Willis was on a boat going to the USS Wyoming, a ship used for experimental work. Shortly after the boat started, he collapsed. The boat quickly went to the nearest ship, but it was too late. Willis Augustus Lee had a massive heart attack and died. He was 57 years old. He was buried with full honors at Arlington National Cemetery 3 days later. Willis Augustus Lee left a great legacy. He often chose very capable officers for his staff, and many of them later became admirals. A large destroyer was also named in his honor, the USS Willis A. Lee DL. For many people who served with him believed he was one of the finest admirals the U.S. Navy ever had, and perhaps the best battleship admiral. He was a man of great skill, intelligence, and dedication, who always worked to make the Navy stronger.